Tomorrow. It all begins tomorrow. In less than 24 hours, the largest football tournament in the history of the game will officially come to life. The flags are up, the stages are built, the performers are rehearsing, and 87,000 people are preparing to walk through the gates of the most legendary stadium on Earth. And yet, right now, tonight, on the eve of the most anticipated opening ceremony FIFA has ever staged, something is happening in the streets of Mexico City that nobody in world football's corridors of power wants to talk about. The city is burning with tension, and not the kind that comes from football. Stay with us, because what is unfolding right now in Mexico City, just hours before the 2026 World Cup kicks off, is one of the most dramatic and extraordinary eve-of-tournament stories this game has ever seen. And the drama is only building. Let us begin with what is happening on Paseo de la Reforma, one of Mexico City's most iconic avenues, a wide, grand boulevard lined with skyscrapers and monuments, the kind of street that tells you instantly that this is a city that takes its own greatness seriously. FIFA spent months decorating that avenue. Towering sculptures of football players were installed along its length, larger than life, designed to tell the world that the beautiful game had arrived in Mexico City, and that Mexico was ready to welcome it. They were bold, they were proud, they were statements of intention. And in the last few days, those statues have been toppled. Members of Mexico's dissident teachers union, the CNTE, used ropes to pull the football player sculptures down from their bases along the Reforma. Some were stripped, some were burned. The images have spread around the world this week, the fallen figures of footballers lying on one of the most photographed streets in Latin America. Graffiti sprayed across their bases, reading the union's name in defiant capital letters. The union's slogan has become the phrase that haunts the opening of this tournament. 5 words, blunt and deliberate. If there is no solution, the ball will not roll. This is not a small movement. Thousands of teachers have occupied Mexico City's historic Zócalo Square, one of the most symbolically important public spaces in the entire country. They have blocked highways connecting the capital to surrounding cities. They have staged marches through the center of a city now flooded with international football fans arriving from across the world. They broke into the headquarters of Mexico's Public Education Secretariat earlier this week, damaging the building and injuring at least 2 police officers in the process. And they have threatened explicitly and publicly to disrupt tomorrow's opening ceremony at the Azteca. Not the match, the ceremony, the moment that FIFA has spent years building. The situation escalated further just days ago when police used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse demonstrators who attempted to breach security barriers near the football fan zone. Visitors from across the world, arriving in Mexico City to celebrate football, found themselves navigating a capital city in a state of genuine social unrest. The two worlds, the tournament's polished festival atmosphere and the raw anger of workers demanding to be heard, are colliding in real time on the same streets at the same moment. What are the teachers demanding? Their central grievance concerns a pension reform introduced nearly 2 decades ago that dismantled a solidarity-based pension scheme and replaced it with individually managed private accounts. They want that reform reversed. They want salaries doubled, a demand rooted in the reality that entry-level public school teachers in Mexico earn the equivalent between $400 and $800 a month. The government has offered a 10% pay increase. The union has dismissed it as completely insufficient. And so here we are, the night before the World Cup, with the stadium lit and the stage prepared, and Shakira somewhere in the city rehearsing the song that will open football's greatest party, while just a few kilometers away, teachers are occupying the Zócalo and threatening to march on the Azteca itself tomorrow morning. Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, has called the protests near the fan zone a provocation. She has insisted the tournament will proceed without disruption. Authorities have pledged that security around the stadium and the opening ceremony is robust and guaranteed.
FIFA's president, for his part, has delivered the line that has become his signature response to every crisis surrounding this tournament. He says he monitors the situation. He says things happen in the world. He says the most important thing is to trust the authorities, to support Mexico, to support a country that has suffered and that deserves this World Cup to be a party. And then he says those 4 words that seem to float above every problem like a balloon. It will be a party. But while world football's most powerful official maintains his confidence, something else entirely is unfolding in the city's streets. A man named Pedro Ortega, a visually impaired street vendor who has spent years working the city's metro system, selling small items to commuters, is no longer where he was. The city government has removed people like him from the metro stations in preparation for the World Cup. The intention, clearly, is that Mexico City should look its best for the world. Pedro tells anyone who will listen that he loves football. He says it without anger, just with a kind of quiet, dignified heaviness. And then he asks the question that no ceremony can answer. How, he says, can anyone put a football tournament above the dignity of people like him? That question is sitting over Mexico City tonight, alongside the floodlights and the papel picado banners and the music filtering through the stadium walls. Now, let us talk about the stadium itself, because whatever is happening outside it, the Estadio Azteca, known for this tournament as Mexico City Stadium, is a place that demands you stop and feel its weight for a moment. This ground has hosted more football history than almost any other structure on Earth. It was here in 1970 that Pelé lifted Brazil and an entire generation simultaneously. It was here in 1986 that Diego Maradona produced what many still call the greatest individual performance in the history of the sport, scoring first with his hand, denying it with a grin, and then dribbling through half the England team minutes later as though none of them could move fast enough to stop him. This is the only stadium ever to have hosted 2 World Cup finals. Standing inside it is not simply attending a football match, it is standing inside a living archive. And tomorrow it will host a 3rd World Cup opening match, the first stadium in history to do that. The opening ceremony itself is extraordinary in design. FIFA has broken entirely with tradition for 2026. Instead of one global opening spectacle, there are 3, one in each host nation. Mexico goes first. Canada and the United States follow tomorrow. Each ceremony is 90 minutes before its country's first match, and each has been built around the culture and identity of the nation hosting it. Mexico's built around the traditional art of papel picado, the intricate cutting of colored tissue paper into dancing patterns that have decorated Mexican celebrations for centuries. Indigenous performers are part of the show, folkloric dancers, contemporary artists, and a musical lineup that reads like a statement of Latin American cultural pride. Shakira headlines, the Colombian superstar who gave the world Waka Waka for the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, is back on football's grandest stage, performing Die Die, the official song of this tournament, alongside Nigerian artist Burna Boy. The title simply means, "Come on, let's go," a phrase that tomorrow will carry the weight of everything this tournament has been through to arrive at this moment. Alongside them, Maná, the Mexican rock group who called this tournament the event of the century for their country, Alejandro Fernández, Belinda, Lila Downs, Los Angeles Azules, the Venezuelan singer Danny Ocean, and South Africa's own Tyla, a voice that bridges the 2 nations about to meet on the pitch.
The match itself carries a layer of history so thick it almost feels unreal. 16 years ago, almost to this exact day, on June 11, 2010, South Africa and Mexico played each other in the opening game of the World Cup in Johannesburg. South Africa's Shipiwa Tshabalala scored one of the great World Cup goals that day, a rising shot into the corner that sent an entire continent into delirium. Mexico's Rafael Marquez equalized. The match ended 1-1. And tomorrow, in the reverse fixture, the same two nations meet again. Same date, different continent, and Marquez is still involved, now as Mexico's assistant manager, watching from the dugout.
History does not repeat often in football. When it does, it tends to mean something. Mexico come into this opening match carrying the pressure that every host nation understands but cannot fully prepare for. Javier Aguirre, in his third spell managing El Tri, has built a disciplined, organized side. 7 clean sheets in their last 10 matches tell you about the team's defensive character. Raúl Jiménez, the veteran striker who overcame a serious skull fracture earlier in his career to reclaim his place at the heart of Mexico's attack, carries the hopes of a nation that has spent a generation trying to break beyond the round of 16. South Africa arrive as underdogs as they were in 2010. Manager Hugo Broos has been frustrated by his side's preparation. A goalless draw with Nicaragua and a 1-1 against Jamaica in their warm-up matches have not inspired confidence. But Bafana Bafana carry something that statistics do not easily capture. They carry the memory of what they did 16 years ago on the same date against the same opponents. And in football, memory is not nothing. For South African supporters back home, and for the fans from across Africa who wanted desperately to be present but could not attend, tomorrow carries an emotional weight that sits alongside the football itself. South Africa are back at a World Cup for the first time since they hosted it in 2010. The Bafana Bafana, walking back out onto a World Cup pitch and doing it against the very same team that shared that historic opening night with them 16 years ago. And yet here is the deep, painful irony at the heart of tomorrow's opening match. South Africa's own fans, the people who should be filling sections of that stadium in yellow and green, the people who should be there to witness this moment, are largely absent. The visa complications, the financial barriers, the sheer impossibility of the journey for many ordinary South African supporters means that the Azteca tomorrow will be overwhelmingly, almost entirely, green, Mexico green. The Bafana Bafana will walk out onto the most historic pitch in football in front of 87,000 people, and almost none of those people will be cheering for them. There is something about that image, the players on the pitch, the home crowd roaring, the away supporters watching from living rooms thousands of miles away, that captures everything this 2026 World Cup has meant for football fans from nations whose supporters could not make the journey. The moment is real, the football is real, the pride is real, but the presence is missing. Mexico City is currently a city of 2 conversations happening simultaneously in the same streets at the same volume, pointing in opposite directions. One conversation is about celebration, about color and music and football, and the particular electricity that descends on a place when the world is coming to visit. International fans are flooding into the capital right now. The hotels that are filled are genuinely buzzing. The streets around the stadium are alive, and the anticipation of a football match that begins in less than 24 hours is real and powerful and contagious. The other conversation is about something harder to resolve, about teachers who earn between $400 and $800 a month, about families of Mexico's 130,000 missing people who are using the global spotlight of the World Cup to make their grief visible to an international audience, about animal rights groups and pensioners and disability advocates and all the other communities who have decided that the moment the whole world is watching is exactly the right moment to be heard. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum calls the protests near the fan zone a provocation. The teachers call it a last resort. Somewhere between those two positions is the truth that every host nation eventually faces. When the world comes to your city cannot pretend to be something it is not. The cameras see everything. Tonight, the stage is set. The Azteca is ready. The floodlights are on. Shakira is in the city. The football statues along the Reforma are lying sideways on the pavement.